Hello and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS. In today's session, let's discuss the important economics articles that have appeared from 12th of February to 18th of February 2022. The first very important article is related to the green hydrogen policy. Now, first and foremost, what is this green hydrogen? Then we'll have a look at what are the important announcements done by the government under this particular policy. Generally, when you discuss the idea of a hydrogen, there are three types of hydrogen. Right? One is called as a grey hydrogen, second one is a blue hydrogen, and the third one is a green hydrogen. Now, these three are very often there in the newspapers. The basic idea of this particular type of a hydrogen is that the green hydrogen is environment friendly, is produced through electrolysis, and there is no emissions which will cause harm to the environment. Whereas when you talk of grey hydrogen, there are certain emissions which are caused, right, and this will cause harm to the environment. Whereas in the context of blue hydrogen, emission is there, but we generally sequester it, store it, or basically capture it as a result of this. Between blue and the grey, blue is less harmful to the environment. Now, in the context of Indian economy, in the last couple of years, Government of India has been promoting more and more production of green hydrogen. All of this particular discussion started in one of the announcements done by the Prime Minister of India during the Independence Day, when the Prime Minister basically stated that Government of India will be producing a huge amount of hydrogen, and India will not be just the producer of the green hydrogen, we will also become the exporter of hydrogen. And keeping in mind all of these particular announcements, Government of India put forward a target of 5 million tons of hydrogen production in case of India itself. Now, one more very important point you need to understand in the context of hydrogen is, India is heavily dependent on import of fuels. Is it okay? India is heavily dependent on the import of fuels. For example, in the context of crude oil, generally we will say that around 85% of the requirement or the domestic demand, we actually import it. And what about the gas? The gas requirement, around 50% plus of the gas requirement in the domestic market, we actually import it. Look at all of this particular energy dependence on India on the international market. In the budget for 21 and 22, Finance Minister emphasized on promotion of green hydrogen. And looking at all of this, government now has announced that the green hydrogen policy will be initiated or implemented in two phases. In the first phase or in the first round of green hydrogen policy, 10 announcements have been made, which we'll discuss in a minute. And in the coming days, another round or the second round of green hydrogen policy would be announced. Now, what are the important points in this particular policy? Have a look at these particular important points here. First one is, the producer of green hydrogen can basically source the renewable energy from the market. There is a market for electricity which is called as a power exchange market. So, the producer of green hydrogen can essentially purchase the renewable energy that they require from the power exchange itself. That is first very important point. Now, some of you might be thinking, sir, what is the importance here? Rather than procuring it, or let's say rather than purchasing this particular electricity from, let's say, a DISCOM, that is a distribution company, I'll be purchasing from the market itself. Right? That is the advantage, or that is the point related to the first announcement. Second very important point, government has announced that it will provide open access to these particular manufacturers. Now, you'll simply have a question, sir, what do you mean by open access? The concept of open access was announced by the government back in the year back in the concept of Electricity Act of 2003. Is it okay? Electricity Act of 2003. And what is the idea of open access here? Imagine I'm one of the manufacturers in the market, or let's say producers in the market. I require huge amount of electricity. Rather than purchasing it from, let's say, the DISCOM or getting it from DISCOM, I will go to the electricity market or the power exchange, purchase it from there. But now the question arises, when I purchase it, how do I get it transferred to my manufacturing facility? Because generally the electricity infrastructure that has been developed is owned by the government. That is, let's say in simple terms, the wiring which is used to transfer electricity. So when they talk about open access, it simply means that you as a consumer of electricity, you can use this particular infrastructure which is already set up by the government and get it transferred, right, from one point, let's say from the producer to your factory gate. That is a basic idea of open access. And the government now says, under the hydrogen policy, we will provide the manufacturers the concept of open access within 15 days of application. And not just this, the government also has stated that the interstate transmission charges will be waived off, not just for 1 year or 2 years, but for in fact 25 years. Now what is this interstate transmission charges? Whenever you are moving the electricity from one point to another point, you could be moving the electricity within one state, or you could be moving this particular electricity across the state borders as such. And when you move this particular electricity across the state border, this is called as interstate electricity transportation. And when you move the electricity across the border like this, there are certain charges which are imposed by the central government. And when you move the electricity within one state, then the state government will impose charges, and that is called as intrastate electricity. Is it okay? Between two states, right, interstate, and within one state, intrastate. So the central government which imposes the charges on interstate transmission, it has stated that to these particular producers who are going to purchase the electricity, use it for production of green hydrogen, for the year of, for 25 years, for the tenure of 25 years, government would not be imposing any of these particular transportation charges or transmission charges. What is the importance here? Right? Have a look at this particular example. Imagine here is the person who is consuming electricity. This electricity is supplied to this particular person by, let's say, a DISCOM. The DISCOM would have purchased electricity from a producer. So whenever the producer will transfer or the generator will transfer electricity to the DISCOM like this, if it is within the same state, intrastate transportation or transmission charges are imposed. And when the producer, that is a generation company, is from another state and the DISCOM is from another state, then the central government will impose interstate transmission charges. And they generally add to the cost of acquisition, cost of purchasing for the DISCOM. And when the DISCOM will supply the same electricity to the producer, or let's say the company here, the charges which are imposed by this particular DISCOM is inclusive of the interstate or intrastate transmission charges which are paid by this particular DISCOM. Now, if these particular charges are waived off, and please understand this very carefully, although I am saying if these charges are waived off, right now only the central government has waived off interstate transmission charges. As of now, state governments have not yet announced a waiver of this particular intrastate transmission charges. So when the central government waives off such transmission charges, the cost of acquiring or the cost of acquiring such electricity for the green hydrogen producer would become lesser. And when the cost of acquisition becomes lesser, automatically the cost of production of hydrogen will also become lesser. And that is one very important point here. Why? Generally, when you discuss the green hydrogen, one of the issues related to green hydrogen in case of India has been that the cost of producing green hydrogen is higher. Generally, they will give a range between 200 plus rupees to up to 400 plus rupees. So cost of producing green hydrogen is very, very high in India. And by providing these kinds of measures or reforms, Government of India wants to ensure that the cost of production of hydrogen will automatically come down. And when the cost of production comes down, the market prices, at what price these are sold in the market, will automatically come down. So absorption or usage of such type of energy will automatically start increasing. That is the important application of this particular announcement of the government. Next, if a particular manufacturer of green hydrogen has purchased renewable energy, but he doesn't use so much of renewable energy, let's say for the current production. Have you understand this? Right? Imagine I am the producer, I have purchased a certain amount of renewable energy, but I don't require so much of renewable energy in the current, let's say 15 days time period. So what I can do is I can simply bank or I can simply park this particular extra unusable renewable energy with the DISCOM for the next 30 days. Right? This facility has been provided by the government now. I'll repeat it again so that it's clear to you. Imagine you are a producer, you have purchased renewable energy, but you don't require this particular renewable energy at least for next 15 days. So what will you do now? Right? The government says you don't have to be worried. This extra renewable energy that you don't use for or don't need for the next 30 days, you can simply park it or bank it with the DISCOM, and later when you will require it, you can simply withdraw it or take it from the DISCOM. That is one more very important announcement. Next important announcement, renewable purchase obligation incentive to manufacture and distribute to licensee. Now what do you mean by this particular concept of renewable purchase obligation? I'll use a short form here, RPO. Renewable purchase obligation essentially stands for RPO. Right? Now understand this. The concept of RPO has been introduced by the government of India for a very simple reason, that there is a demand for the renewable energy that is produced in India. That is, there is a concept of obligation on these particular DISCOMs to purchase certain percentage of electricity that is demanded by them in the form of renewable energy itself. For example, let me take a very simple example. Imagine a particular state is there, and the State Electricity Regulatory Commission or SERC has determined that for this particular state government, 20% of the energy that they consume, that is the DISCOM purchases, should be coming from the renewable energy itself. That is, again, renewable energy obligation under this is divided into solar as well as non-solar. But essentially, what is the meaning of this? It simply means the DISCOM of this particular state, if it requires, let's say 100 megawatts of electricity, then out of this 100 megawatts, 20 megawatts has to come from renewable energy sources itself. Is it okay? 20 megawatts has to come from renewable energy sources itself. And by implementing the concept of renewable purchase obligation, government is ensuring that there is always a demand for renewable energy market in India. Done? And the government now says, same concept of RPO will try to introduce that in the context of hydrogen energy also. That is, we will introduce a concept of, let's say, hydrogen purchase obligation or hydrogen energy purchase obligation, which means these particular consumers such as DISCOMs in the market, they will have to purchase certain percentage of their consumption in the form of hydrogen energy, that is specifically green hydrogen energy itself. Right? That is one more very important announcements or one of the very important announcements done by the government. Next one, single portal for clearances. The term is single portal here. Some of the books will mention that it is a single window clearance. What is the meaning of this? Very simply understand this. You want to set up a manufacturing facility, you are supposed to take multiple clearances, multiple licenses. Now, rather than running from one ministry to another ministry, one department to another department, and struggling to get all the clearances, you will be asked to apply for all the clearances from one portal itself. Whatever requirements are there for licenses, simply apply for that in the portal and you would be given all the required licenses or clearances. That concept is called as single portal for clearances or single window clearance system. For setting up of green hydrogen production unit or manufacturing of green hydrogen, government has proposed a single portal for clearances. Next, DISCOMs have been allowed to buy and sell renewable power to manufacturers at concessional rates. Again, right, access will be provided to these particular manufacturers or producers at a cheaper rate of the renewable energy acquisition. And finally, have a look at this. manufacturers will be allowed to set up bunkers near ports for storage. That is, earlier I've told you this. Government doesn't want just to produce green hydrogen energy in India. We also want to become one of the top exporter of the green hydrogen energy into the international market. And for this particular purpose, the manufacturers can acquire certain land or get access to land from port authorities, develop bunkers in these particular regions, and these will be developed nearby the ports so that the exports can be done very, very easily. Right, so these are some of the very important announcements that are done by the government in the first round of green hydrogen policy. Again, just reiterating here, this is just the first round. Government has stated that they will announce one more round in the coming days. Done? The next very important article that has created a lot of headlines is the inflation rate in the US market and the likely effect of that inflation rate on Indian economy. Because ultimately what you need to understand here is what is the effect of the US inflation rate on India. Because you are writing UPSC exam, so you need to connect to those particular dots. Now first and foremost, how the inflation has happened in case of USA, that is a very interesting concept. Understand this. Generally inflation happens because of either supply side or demand side factors. And if you have been watching the ETW very regularly, I am pretty sure in the last 1 year you must have heard me saying the same statement at least, let's say, 20 times. That is, inflation can be caused because of supply side as well as the demand side factors. Now what has happened in USA? That is very interesting. During the pandemic, the overall production in the US economy fell down. Just like Indian economy, the production in the US economy also took a hit. The GDP growth rate registered one of the sharpest contractions in the history of USA. Not only that, more than 20 million jobs were lost. That is very, very important. More than 20 million jobs were actually lost because of the pandemic. Now understand what has happened after that. This is the first part of the story. Second part, the central bank there, that is the Federal Reserve, and the government there, in order to provide an impetus to promote a recovery in the economy, started infusing huge amount of liquidity in the market. The central banker, through quantitative easing, pushed a lot of liquidity in the market. And the government there, just like government of India, gave lot of subsidies, gave lot of income support to the households. Second part of the story. Come to the third part of the story. Now, as a result of both of these, what has happened is, we expected that the US economy would recover very, very slowly and steadily. But in reality, what has happened is, the economy has rebounded. Is it okay? The economy has rebounded, has recovered at a very, very fast pace. And whenever there is a huge recovery or a very fast recovery like this, what is the outcome? The demand for goods and services will start increasing in the market. Is it okay? When there is a recovery, that is, let's say people have money now, cheaper liquidity is available in the market, the demand for goods and services has rebounded, has increased very sharply in the last couple of months in USA. And when the demand suddenly rises up like this, the supply also has to increase. Is it okay? The supply also has to increase. But the supply is not able to match with the demand recovery in the economy. Now, you understand this. This particular pain which is getting created in the US market is the outcome of good economic situation. You understand this. This particular pain which is getting created in the US economy, it is not because of certain bad issues in the economy, not because of certain bad events in the recent times. It is because of certain good outcomes or good performance of the economy. What do you mean by that, sir? Demand is very, very high. Demand is increasing. Because during pandemic, some people did not demand goods and services. They stored money. There was a pent-up demand. In addition to this, they were given lot of support by the government in the form of financial support. Now, put together both of them, they are demanding more and more goods and services. And that is the precise reason, understand this, employment rate in case of US is actually increasing. I can understand this. The hiring process has actually picked up pace. But along with that, the demand is so high that the supply is unable to match the demand. And that is the precise reason why there is a very high inflation rate in case of USA. In fact, this particular same article says that the inflation rate that has been quoted for the month of January is a 40-year high. 40-year high, very, very high rate of inflation. Now, initially when the inflation rate was slightly moving upwards like this, the experts as well as the Fed Reserve basically neglected it. Neglected in the sense that they stated that this is just transitory in nature. It is just a passing phase, nothing to be worried about it. They in fact stated that by the end of December 2021, right, as well as 2022, the inflation rate would start cooling down, nothing to be concerned here. But what has happened is, the inflation rate has started inching more and more upwards. Done? This is a story in case of USA now. But what is the impact on India? That is ultimately what you need to understand. What is the impact on India? Very simple. When inflation starts to raise or increase at a very fast back in USA, the Federal Reserve will not have any option but to hike the interest rate. In fact, in the recent times, the Federal Reserve had announced that they will increase the interest rate, but in the month of March. Now, if the inflation continues unabated like this, much sooner, even before the March, the Federal Reserve might end up announcing a hike in the interest rate. Now, in USA, the interest rates will start increasing, and as a result of this, what is the impact on India? The foreign institutional investors will start withdrawing funds from India and will start moving towards USA. That will create volatility in the forex market in India. First point. And the second point is, imagine here is the company in India. Here is a company in India. They want to borrow under the external commercial borrowing route, ECB route, from USA. Now in USA, if the interest rates start rising upwards like this, right, don't you think the cost of borrowing under ECB will also start increasing for these particular companies? Definitely yes. So their borrowing might be affected, and when their borrowings are affected, the types of investment that they would have done in India would also get affected. That is very, very important. And understand this, generally we will say that inflation in any country, right, when there is very high rate of inflation in any country is not good. Especially in a country such as USA, inflation which is growing at a very fast pace definitely is not good. And what is the context of that to India? What is the connection of that to India? Right, in recent times there has been a lot of discussion with respect to rising price of freight rates, rising prices of international commodities such as steel, crude, etc. Because the markets are interconnected like this, there will be certainly an impact of a US inflation rate felt on the Indian economy. So these are some of the very, very important points related to this article. Now let me give you certain very important aspect here. Right, in recent times there has been a lot of discussion related to this. There has been a discussion even in the economic survey regarding this. So let's try and understand what is the importance of the semiconductors, chips and automobiles. Now understand this, whenever you talk about recovery in the economy, is it okay? Whenever you talk about recovery in the economy, one indicator that is generally referred to is what has been the demand for vehicles. Is it okay? I'll repeat it again. Whenever you talk about recovery in the economy, one way to gauge recovery, one way to measure recovery is what has been the demand for the vehicles in the market. If the demand for the vehicles is actually increasing, it is generally considered to be a very good indicator, and they will say that there is sufficient amount of recovery that is happening in the economy. Now in case of India, please understand this, just like any country, there is a demand, a rising demand for the vehicles. But when you look at how many vehicles are being sold, there is one point of concern here. Is it okay? I'll repeat it again. There is a very high demand for vehicles. Let's say 4 vehicles in India. But how many of these particular demanded vehicles, or let's say out of the total ordered vehicles, how many are actually getting delivered? That is a point of concern. And understand this, whatever I discuss now is not a problem from the demand side. The problem that I will discuss now is a problem from the supply side. So what is the idea here? Generally, when you talk of manufacturing of vehicles, you require chips. Is it okay? Right? You require chips as such. And generally around 4 to 5% of value addition in these particular sectors comes because of the usage of chips itself. Now, what is the problem here? The production and supply of chips has been affected. Is it okay? The production and supply of the chips has been affected. During pandemic, suddenly the production came down because the demand was very low. Now there is a very sudden recovery which is happening in the economy, and the demand for the chips also has risen up at a very, very faster pace. Now some of you might be thinking, sir, if the demand is increasing, why don't we simply increase the production? That is not as easy as it could be. The problem here is, one, the usage of chips is connected with multiple industries, multiple sectors. As per economic survey, remember this particular point, the spillover, I've got to say spillover means the connection, right, which can be generated, that is the connections which can be generated amongst various industries, various sectors, because there is a shortage of chips in the market. So the spillover can be extended to around 169 type of industries. Very, very large connection can be done, which essentially means if the demand for the chips is not met soon enough, there will be certain issues in all of these particular areas as such. That's the first point. And second point, some of you will recommend now, sir, if that is a problem with respect to the demand and supply, why don't we promote production of these particular chips in India itself? Very valid point. But the problem here is, one, have a look at this. In case of infrastructure projects, generally we use a term called as a gestation period. Is it okay? Generally we refer to a term called as a gestation period. And what is this gestation period? I am saying gestation, some of you might say gestation, whatever it is. Gestation essentially means from the point of starting to construct the infrastructure project till the point where production can actually begin in the industry. Is it okay? For example, imagine I want to set up a manufacturing facility. So from the day one when I start manufacturing to day, let's say N, where the manufacturing facility is set up and I can manufacture the goods, how much time is taken? That is called as gestation period. And in the context of the chips or manufacturing of these particular chips, the gestation period generally is around 6 to 9 months. Is it okay? It is around 6 to 9 months. Very, very long time period. And not just this is a problem. There is an additional problem here. There is something called as a production cycle. Is it okay? There is something called as production cycle. Right? What is a production cycle? When I talk about gestation period, the plant is ready. The manufacturing facility is ready. But the process that it will take us to manufacture the chips and finally sell it to a car manufacturer. Is it okay? The various stages of production which will consume time, and the time that is taken to manufacture the chip finally, that is called as a production cycle. The production cycle in case of chips is generally around 6 to 8 weeks. Is it okay? It is around 6 to 8 weeks, which essentially means when you recommend that we must set up more and more manufacturing facility to produce the chips, it essentially means assuming all the regulatory clearances are provided tomorrow itself, you will require, let's say, around 6 to 9 months here, and after that 6 to 8 weeks to actually manufacture the chip, which comes at around 10 to 11 months. So this particular issue of the chip designing or chip manufacturing, chip supplying to the market will not be resolved very, very smoothly or very quickly in the market. And please understand this, in the coming days, whenever they discuss, let's say, issue with automobile sector, always understand this. They could be talking about the supply side in the automobile sector, but not the problem of a demand side, which essentially means a recovery could have happened in the economy. People actually want to purchase, they have booked these particular vehicles, but because of shortage of, let's say, chips, this particular delivery of the vehicles could be delayed. Done? Now some of you might be thinking, sir, what is the relation of all of this in UPSC? Just to prove my point, I have given a question here. Have a look at this. The recent spike in inflation in India and global market is a result of supply side as well as a demand side issues. Elaborate in 250 words. So if a question of this particular nature is asked, you will have to write the disruption that has been caused because of supply side factors in the economy, as a result of which prices have increased. You will also have to write the demand side factors which have caused a disruption or which have caused the demand to rise up above the supply and that are causing inflation. Done? So this is a descriptive question. Just try to address these kind of questions. Let's go to the next article. The new CSR mandate. Now what is the CSR? Corporate Social Responsibility. Now what is the new mandate that discussing here? So for understand this, Government of India introduced Companies Act of 2013, and under that they introduced Corporate Social Responsibility. Although the idea of CSR was there in CA 2013, it actually came into force from 1st April 2014. Is it okay? It came into force, it was applied from 1st April 2014. Now what is the CSR? The CSR guidelines essentially say that if a particular company has a net worth of 500 crore rupees, that is at least 500 crores, a turnover of at least 1000 crores, or a profit of 5 crores in the last 3 successive consecutive years, then this particular company has to take average of 2% of the profits. Is it okay? 2% of the profits or net profits for the last 3 years, it has to be taken, and they will have to use it under corporate social responsibility. They will have to provide for certain expenditure under corporate social responsibility. This is in a nutshell the concept of CSR. And with implementation of CSR, annually these particular companies were asked to provide data to the government. There is an authority called as Registrar of Companies, ROC, and these particular companies were supposed to report or submit a data to Register of Companies. And using this particular data, government could simply identify and find out how much was the total expenditure done by these particular companies under CSR. But now Government of India has introduced a new CSR mandate. Is it okay? The Government of India has introduced a new CSR mandate. Now what do you mean by new CSR mandate here? One more document, that is 11-page document, which will be referred to as CSR2, has been introduced by the government now. Is it okay? A new document, 11-page document by the name of CSR2 has been introduced by the government. And those particular companies which are incurring expenditure under CSR, okay, now they will have to fill up this particular document, provide it to Registrar of Companies. What is the use of this? Right? What is the use? Right? Because already they were submitting the data to Register of Companies. But now, government will be able to identify or get better quality data from these particular companies. Sir, for example, what? Until now, how much was the total expenditure done by these particular companies? Government could come to know about this from the filing done by the companies under ROC or with ROC. Now they just don't have to submit how much they have spent. They will also have to give information. For example, what kind of infrastructure projects are being developed under CSR initiative? Are these particular companies following the guidelines under CSR guidelines, right, which were announced by the government back in the 2014? Have they set up a corporate social responsibility committee in the company? Have they provided all of this information on their website or not? So this kind of a quality information will have to be submitted by these particular companies when they submit CSR2 with ROC or file CSR2 with ROC. And the importance is that based on this information, now Government of India can go for data mining process. They can formulate better policies because they know how the companies are utilizing the funds under CSR. So these are the added advantage related to this particular new CSR mandate. Having said so, there are certain quarters in the economy, certain experts who have raised a concern, who have flagged a concern related to this concept. That is, they are saying that as government will ask for more documentation from these particular companies, the cost of compliance for these particular companies will increase. Is it okay? The cost of complying with these new guidelines will increase for the companies. That is a concern which has been flagged by various experts. So these are some of the very important points related to this article. Let's go to the next article related to ATM penalty. Now what is this ATM penalty? Last year, in the month of August, RBI came out with a policy and stated that if a particular ATM owned by the service provider remains without cash for a duration of 10 hours in a month. Is it okay? Understand the statement here. ATMs are set up either by the bank itself or in the form of brown label ATMs or white label ATMs. And if a particular ATM remains without cash for a total duration of, let's say, at least 10 years in a particular month, then RBI announced that a flat penalty of 10,000 per ATM would be imposed. Is it okay? A flat penalty of 10,000 rupees per ATM would be imposed by RBI on the person who is going to provide or who is responsible for operating these ATMs. Sir, what do you mean by this? Let's take a very simple example. Imagine I'm one of the operator, I'm providing the ATM services. And let's say I have 100 ATMs which I'm responsible for refilling of cash and maintaining of these particular ATMs. Now let's say in this month, out of 100 ATMs, 10 of these ATMs have remained without cash for a period of, let's say, 20 hours. Is it okay? For a period of 20 hours, they have remained without cash. So RBI will look at these ATMs, 10 ATMs, and they'll say, because you have violated the guideline that I have implemented, on these 10 ATMs, I will impose a flat penalty of 10,000 rupees per ATM, and you pay this particular amount of penalty. That was the announcement done by the government last year. And then and there itself, there are various service providers or ATM operators who had raised concern related to this kind of a policy. Their argument was that there are many situations which are beyond our control, wherein we will not be able to refill the cash in these ATMs within this particular stipulated time period. There will be certain situations where I will not be able to meet this particular criteria. For example, have a look at this. In case of a rural India, there are issues with respect to logistics. I want to refill the cash in a particular ATM. What if there is a huge rainfall? The only road that used to connect this particular village is flooded now. I will not be able to carry the cash and refill the ATM. Or there is an earthquake, the road is destroyed. Or there is certain kind of activity, or let's say left-wing extremism activities happening there. Security issues are there. I am finding it very difficult to move the cash in this particular region. Don't you think all of these are valid causes wherein the operator will not be able to refill the cash? And these situations are beyond the control of these operators. But RBI will not consider all of it, and he will simply say that because your ATM has remained cashless for a duration more than 10 hours, I will impose a penalty. In fact, these operators cited one very valid issue. They stated that as per Government of India guideline itself, in urban area, after 9 PM, I am not supposed to carry the cash for refilling of the ATMs in urban area. And in rural area, after 6 PM, I am not allowed to refill with cash. In case of those regions which are notified by Ministry of Home Affairs as a left-wing affected areas, after 4 PM, I am not allowed to refill cash, or I am not allowed to carry cash to put it in the ATMs. And before 9 AM, I am not allowed to do that. So in these situations, the ATMs will remain dry. Is it okay? The ATMs will remain dry. Remain dry means without any cash. And these are out of my control. Right? So meeting this particular 10-hour target or 10-hour guideline will be very, very difficult, we will end up paying large amount of penalty to RBI. And very recently RBI has stated that, okay, in that case, if there are situations which are beyond your control and this particular ATM remains dry for more than 10 hours, I will not be imposing any penalty on this. Is it okay? I will not be imposing any penalty. And this, mind you, has been hailed as a very good move by RBI. Why? If this was not done and RBI had stuck to the gun and said nothing doing, this will be the implementation and that will be the timing. What could have happened is these ATM operators either would have paid huge amount of penalty, realized that these are the problem ATMs for us, we will shut them down. Is it okay? We will simply shut them down because there is no point in paying penalty to RBI. And in second case, not only the existing ATMs would have been shut down, now these operators would not have opened more and more ATMs in case of a rural India because of a concern over paying penalty. Right? So these are some of the very important aspects related to this article provided here. Let me go to the next article. National Agriculture Market, ENAM. Now concept of ENAM is very simple, has been introduced to provide certain, let's say, technological assistance to farmers. How the technological assistance will be provided? Understand this very carefully. The farmer will take the crop, go to APMC and try to sell this particular crop in the APMC, where the traders or buyers will come, bid and purchase the crop. But what if we provide access to other markets also to the same farmer? So under the concept of ENAM, we have linked multiple APMCs like this. As per the latest data, 1000 APMs have been connected. So the farmer who will bring the crop to APMC now, through the ENAM platform, will be able to sell the crop across all of these particular 1000 APMCs as such. Right? He can simply sell it, right, to any buyer who will log on to this particular ENAM and will start bidding and purchase the crops through ENAM. So through technological assistance, we wanted to ensure that the farmers will be able to sell the crop and get better revenues on these particular crops. So over a period of time, what has happened? What has been the performance of ENAM? Have a look at these particular points. 2019 and 20, the value of transactions on ENAM was around 35,000 crore rupees. I'm just rounding off the number. And in 2021, it has actually fallen down by more than 10% to around 31,400 crore rupees. So from 1920 to 2021, there has been a decline. But for the year 2021 and 22, look at the number here. The highest ever transactions, is it okay? The highest ever transactions have been recorded on National Agriculture Market. That is more than 42,000 crore worth of value of transactions have been recorded since the implementation of National Agriculture Market. And what is the importance? Importance simply means that more and more stakeholders now, more and more farmers are basically accepting the concept of a ENAM. Having said so, please understand this. There are various issues even today which are plaguing the concept of ENAM. What are these issues? Those issues have not been mentioned here, but please make a note of this. 1000 mandis have been connected, no doubt, 1000 mandis have been connected on the ENAM, but only around in 571 out of this, proper online sales is actually taking place. Is it okay? Only in 571 of these, right, online trading is actually taking place. So the argument of the experts is, rather than focusing on covering more and more APMCs under ENAM, why don't we ensure that those mandis which are already covered will start performing better and better? That's the first point. Second very important point. Although a lot of farmers are present on the ENAM, all the number of farmers or all the farmers in India even today are not registered under ENAM. Right? Generally, they will say that around 1 crore plus farmers are registered under ENAM. But as per various data, more than 1 crore, that is huge number of farmers which are working in India, which are involved in farming in India, they are not registered on the ENAM. So you need to ensure that these farmers will also be covered under ENAM so that they will also earn better amount of revenues. Third very important point here. Although I am saying that a record value of transactions of more than 42,000 crore rupees has been conducted under ENAM. Please understand this. Most of these particular transactions are intra-state transactions. Is it okay? Intra-state transactions, that is within the same state. Right now, Government of India should ensure that more and more interstate transactions will also be conducted. And for that particular purpose, there is a need to set up a dispute resolution mechanism. Is it okay? The government needs to set up a dispute resolution mechanism. Why this is important? For example, imagine you are a buyer, you are sitting in another state. I am a farmer, I will cultivate the crop, get the quality certificate, get the crop listed in the ENAM platform, you will bid, you will purchase, I will transport, that is basically send the crops to you. You will receive the crop, look at the crop, and now you feel that, okay, what was given in the platform, what kind of a quality was mentioned, it is not the same kind of a quality which has been delivered. So now there is a dispute here, you are saying, right, or you have a grievance saying that the quality is not the same, but I am saying the same quality was listed in the ENAM. So there is a need to set up a dispute resolution mechanism to promote the efficiency and promote interstate transactions as well. Done? So these are some of the very important aspects related to the ENAM here. Now based on this, I have given a question. Consider the following statements regarding ENAM. It is jointly funded by the center and state. Statement is wrong. It is funded only by the central government. Second, it is being implemented by Small Farmers Agribusiness Consortium. Statement is true. Right option for this question will be option B. Next article, application of agriculture technology. Now in this particular article, they have basically discussed one startup, agriculture technology startup, which is set up in Bangalore, how it is helping the farmers from, right, or basically helping them to avoid a distress sale. What is the concept here? One issue that we generally discuss in case of agriculture sector is the storage facility. Is it okay? Storage facility. Now imagine I am a farmer, I have cultivated certain crops, I will take the crops to the market, supply of the crops is very high, market price is very low, I don't have any option but to end up selling these particular crops at a very throwaway prices or very low prices, much lower than what is my cost of production in fact. That is essentially the idea of a distress sale. And there have been examples, right? In case of India itself, there have been examples year after year where the farmers are basically entering into distress sale. Now how can technology be used to prohibit the distress sale? Now please understand the application of this article. Right? Don't say, sir, you are talking about a private sector company. No. In case of GS paper 3, there is one point, application of technology in the agriculture sector. How can you apply the technology? Right? Understand that. There is a startup company in Bangalore by the name Argos. And this particular company is basically hiring. Is it okay? It is basically hiring, or let's say taking lot of warehousing capacity on a lease. And not just a short-term lease. They are hiring or taking it on lease for a very long duration. That's the first point. Second, once they have this particular space, that is a warehousing space on lease, they will get the farmers enrolled under their program. Okay, first they will teach them, first they will inform them about the importance of storage, and then they will basically get them enrolled and start providing this particular warehousing capacity to these farmers. And please understand this, when the farmers will keep their crops in this particular warehouse, this company charges a very nominal price. As per the data given here, the company is charging 40 paise per quintal. Is it okay? They are charging merely 40 paise per quintal, and this particular company will basically take care or protect these particular food grains from, let's say, accidents, fire, from pest, etc. They will protect these particular crops as such. Now the farmers can simply store these particular crops, especially the small and marginal farmers, and a passbook will be issued in the name of these particular farmers. Now next point is, the farmers can store these particular crops right in this particular warehouse for a period of up to 9 months, and during this particular period, if the prices get stabilized in the market, withdraw these particular crops and sell them in the market. That is an advantage. especially for small and marginal farmers. And the second point here that they have mentioned is, if the farmer also wants to get access to credit, that is, the farmer has kept the crops in the warehouse, on that if they want to get access to credit, this company has a tie-up with many financial institutions, and on the crops that they have stored, they can easily get access to credit. Right? So this is basically the model that has been used by this company to protect the farmers, especially the small and marginal farmers, for going or from going through the distress sales as such. Done? So these are the various articles as well as the questions related to the articles for the duration 12th February to 18th February 2022. Now if you like this particular initiative, hit the like button and provide your valuable comments in the section below. And if you have not yet subscribed to BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS, kindly subscribe. Thank you. Have a great day.